Imagine this. A glamorous woman returns to her small town with nothing but a sewing machine and a secret plan. She's ready to change everything. But what if the town's darkest secrets are about to come unraveled? This is a story of revenge, hidden truths, and a twist so wild it'll leave you speechless. Just when you think you know where it's going, bam! You won't believe what happens next. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Dropping a like and a comment is the least you can do to show some love. And like we always say, even if some stories seem the same, they ain't never the same when I'm the one telling them. Set in the 1930s Australia, meet Tilly, a tough girl from a lonely, dusty town so dry it might as well be on the moon. Her ma, Molly, had her out of wedlock, and nobody knew who the pa was. So the town spat on them like they were bad luck wrapped in a ragged coat. Kids called Tilly a fatherless bastard. Grown-ups whispered dark curses about her and her ma, saying anyone near them got hit with trouble faster than a rattlesnake strike. When Tilly was 10, everything blew up. The mayor's boy, about her age, ended up dead, neck broken in a fight. Tilly was the only one there. She forgot the whole thing. Her mind shut down like a saloon door in a storm. But the town had already picked its scapegoat. They blamed her for murder. Sheriff Art, loyal to the mayor, shipped her off to a boarding school in the big city, like tossing a stray dog into a lion's den. At school, the label stuck to her like bad smell. Bullied and alone, she ran away, her eyes set on Paris, ready to survive by any means. 25 years later, 35-year-old Tilly has gone from dusty outcast to a rising star in the fancy world of high fashion. With the sewing skills her ma taught her and a sharp eye for style, she fought her way up, stitch by stitch. But no amount of glitter or silk could cover up the scars from her childhood. Now, Tilly rides back to the town she both hates and misses, ready to clear her name and find out the truth hiding in the dust. The town? Same as ever. Dry, backward, and dead as a rattlesnake in winter. When she sees her mother, Molly, Tilly's heart breaks. Molly's just a shadow now, worn out by loneliness and cruelty. The only thing keeping her alive were rare gifts from folks with a soft heart. Tilly's return sends a cold shiver through the town. The same folks who once tore her down now tremble, thinking she's come back for payback. But Tilly? She doesn't lift a finger against them. Instead, she quietly settles in, watching, waiting, and taking care of her broken ma. One day, the town held a big rugby match against a nearby village, and Tilly showed up dressed to kill. In a bright red dress, perfect makeup, and a star's confident glow, she slipped right behind her hometown's offense. The ultimate distraction nobody saw coming. The local players? Too busy staring to play. The rival team took full advantage and started scoring like a runaway train. At halftime, Teddy, the team captain and the good guy of this dusty town, asked Tilly to move so the boys could maybe remember they were there to play rugby, not swoon. Teddy's family never treated Tilly or her ma badly. They even helped look after Molly when Tilly got kicked out. So, out of thanks, Tilly agreed. She went home, slipped into a black strapless gown, even more tempting, and planted herself behind the other team's offense. This time, the rivals couldn't stop staring, and just like that, they fell apart. The hometown team made a glorious comeback. Tilly wasn't just playing dress-up, she was playing the whole town like a fiddle. After the game, Tilly bumped into Gertrude, an old classmate. Gertrude had fallen for a rich town boy, but her plain face and frumpy clothes kept her stuck in the friend zone. She begged Tilly to make her a fancy dress and teach her makeup so she could shine at the victory party in 2 days, and maybe win the boy's heart. Tilly gave her a price, either a big fee or the truth about what really happened the day Stuart died. Gertrude paused, then spilled the ugly truth. She was the one who told Stuart where Tilly was hiding that day. She was scared of being bullied and didn't want to take Tilly's place. She never saw the boy die. Tilly felt hurt, but kept her word. She made Gertrude a dazzling gown and gave her a full makeover. 2 days later, Gertrude walked into the party like a brand new queen. The rich boy was stunned, and before long, they were engaged. Overnight, Tilly became the town's new fashion queen. Women lined up at her door, begging for style tips and fancy dresses. The dusty village suddenly looked like a fancy countryside runway. Even Sheriff Ferret couldn't stay away. One night, he showed up nervously at Tilly's door with a big secret. He was a cross-dresser, hiding it for years because he was scared of what folks might say. To his surprise, Tilly didn't laugh. Instead, she made him several custom outfits. Slowly, they became friends. Finally, Sheriff Ferret told the truth. He said sorry for sending her away long ago and admitted he did it only because the mayor made him. Meanwhile, love came knocking on Tilly's door. Teddy, the charming rugby captain, was head over boots for her and didn't hide it. As the town slowly warmed up to Tilly, their sweet romance lit up the place like a fairy tale under a big sky. But the mayor? He wasn't having any of it. Watching Tilly steal hearts made him itch like a bad rash. So, in a jealous mood, he hired a middle-aged seamstress named Una to steal the spotlight back. The town's women, always quick to jump, rushed to Una's shop like she was the next big star. Even Gertrude, getting ready to wed, dumped Tilly and asked Una to make her dress. But the rich boy's mama hated the idea of Gertrude as her daughter-in-law, so she secretly paid Una to design the ugliest wedding dress ever seen. When Gertrude tried it on, she almost cried. With nowhere else to turn, she climbed out the window, yes, literally, and ran straight to Tilly. Moments later, her fiancé showed up and saw Gertrude glowing in a stunning gown made by Tilly. One look, and he was hooked all over again. The wedding was back on. That disaster ended Una's short-lived fame. The town's women dumped her overnight. The mayor tried to comfort her, but one thing led to another, and they got cozy, right before the mayor's wife walked in on them. But instead of throwing a fit, the mayor's wife quietly showed up at Tilly's door. Yep, the very same woman who believed Tilly killed her son was now asking for a favor: to sew a knockout dress. Her plan? To strut into Gertrude's wedding and win back her husband with style. Tilly was stunned. Of all people, her? The mayor's wife said she always thought her son fell from a tree by accident. Her husband never once mentioned Tilly. Because of her bad anxiety and strict habits, she hardly ever left the house, so she never heard the nasty town rumors. She also said the only witness her husband ever talked about was Tilly's old school teacher, Miss Beulah. Sometimes the biggest secrets hide in plain sight. Tilly was done playing the town's fool. She wanted her name clean for good. So she bribed Sheriff Ferret with a fancy feathered shawl just to get her hands on Miss Beulah's old statement. What she read shook her to the bone. The statement said Tilly pushed the mayor's son off the water tower, and that's how he died. Tilly was stunned. She didn't remember that at all. She'd always been scared of that boy, staying clear of him like a rattler in the grass. Why would she suddenly cause trouble? Mad as a wildfire, she marched straight to Beulah's door. The old woman broke down quick. She confessed. She'd lied. From her window, she'd seen the mayor's son corner Tilly, bullying her like always. But scared of the mayor, Beulah just closed the curtains and looked away. Then, the tragedy happened right behind the school. Beulah feared the mayor would blame her for not stopping it, so she made Tilly the scapegoat. Sometimes the real villain hides behind a curtain. Hearing the truth, Tilly let loose years of anger, chewing Beulah out right then and there. Funny enough, it was the very day of Gertrude's wedding. Tilly rushed over and told Sheriff Ferret about Beulah's lie, but Ferret wasn't shocked. He quietly said he'd always thought Beulah was lying. Back then, the mayor had pushed hard to banish Tilly, and Ferret couldn't say no. Burning with fury, Tilly asked, "What gave the mayor the right to kick me out?" The sheriff hung his head and whispered, "He didn't. He had no right, but there's a reason." He paused. "Because he's your father." Tilly's world spun like a tumbleweed in a dust storm. Before she could think it over, all hell broke loose. Mrs. Mayor barged into the wedding, screaming that Tilly was a murderer. Turns out, Beulah had sneaked in and fed lies to Mrs. Mayor, dragging up the old story again. Mrs. Mayor lost it, throwing curses like a rattlesnake's bite. And the mayor? He stood there, quiet as a coward in the dark. Teddy had enough. He shoved the mayor aside like a bad habit. In the middle of the chaos, Tilly slipped away and ran. Sometimes, the family you don't know cuts the deepest. As Tilly disappeared into the distance, Teddy's younger brother, the one with a developmental disability, stood there mumbling the same sentence over and over. She dodged it. She didn't do it. She dodged it. That one line stopped Teddy cold. Suddenly, everything made sense. Teddy chased after Tilly and took her to the place where it all went wrong, the scene of the old tragedy. There, he gently reminded her, back in the day, the mayor's son had a sick aim. He pretended to be a bull, ramming his head into other kids' stomachs like some crazy rodeo. His friends would hold the victims so they couldn't dodge. Teddy asked softly, "Do you remember if anything like that happened that day?" Tilly's eyes grew wide. A long-buried memory flickered back to life. That day, after Gertrude left, Tilly had climbed down from the water tower, planning to find another hiding spot. But the mayor's son found her first. He cornered her, told her to stand against the wall, then charged at her like a bull. But this time, there was no one to hold her down. Tilly acted on instinct. She dodged. The boy smashed headfirst into the concrete wall behind her, snapped his neck, and dropped dead. And the whole thing had been seen from a rooftop through a toy telescope by Teddy's younger brother. He couldn't explain it well before, but that one line, "She dodged it, she didn't do it," had always been the truth. At long last, the nightmare was over. Tilly wasn't a murderer. She never had been. She was finally free from the guilt that had haunted her for years. She looked at Teddy, and in that moment, overwhelmed with emotion and thankfulness, she finally let her guard down. One thing led to another, and they spent the night together. Later that night, Tilly and Teddy climbed up to the roof of the town's old grain silo. It was a quiet place where farmers stored their harvest, and also the secret stargazing spot for Teddy and his football teammates. Under the stars, he asked Tilly to marry him. He promised her a big, beautiful wedding that would show the whole town they were in love and proud of it. After that, he said they would leave this suffocating town behind. Just him, Tilly, Molly, and the whole family. No more judgment, no more lies. But Tilly didn't answer right away. Deep down, after a lifetime of being called a jinx, a murderer, a curse, even she had started to wonder, what if it's true? Teddy saw the doubt in her eyes. So he made a bold move to prove once and for all that she wasn't cursed. He said he'd jump into the grain silo below, just like he used to do with his friends back in the day. Tilly begged him not to do it. But before she could stop him, he flung open the hatch and jumped. Something had changed. The wheat was gone. Now the silo was full of loose, powdery sorghum, like quicksand. By the time Tilly realized something was wrong and gathered the townspeople to dig him out, it was already too late. Teddy had suffocated. At his funeral, his family didn't blame Tilly, not once. In fact, after the ceremony, they packed up and left the town for good. But the townspeople turned on Tilly again, just like they always did. They called her a black widow, a walking curse. They said she brought death wherever she went. Tilly locked herself in her room and cried for days. But then something totally surprising happened. Molly, her strange and sometimes wild mom, suddenly snapped out of her long, sad days. It turned out all those years of acting crazy, she was faking it. That was the only way she knew how to stay strong in a town that treated her daughter like she was bad luck. One day, while buying groceries, Molly overheard some women laughing and gossiping about Tilly, even though they were wearing the fancy dresses Tilly had made with her own hands. That was the last straw. Molly marched right over and said, "Teddy didn't die because Tilly is cursed. He died trying to prove his love for her was stronger than your hate." When Molly got home, she sat down and finally told Tilly a secret she had kept hidden for years. The mayor wasn't just a mean old man with a grudge. He was Tilly's father. Back when he was nobody, he and Molly had fallen in love. But once he got big dreams, he left pregnant Molly and married the mayor's daughter to climb the political ladder. He sold them out for power. Molly had hoped that sending Tilly away would give her a fresh start, a chance to see the world and become someone great. Now, she told Tilly, it's time to stop crying. Don't let their ignorance ruin your life. You survived. And that was exactly what Teddy would have wanted. Encouraged by her mother's words, Tilly decided it was time to leave the town behind, taking Molly with her. But just when they were about to run away, the same women who had spread nasty stories about Tilly showed up at her door. It was almost time for the town's big opera festival, and the women needed fancy costumes to compete with the next town over. They actually had the nerve to ask Tilly to make the dresses, but only if they won would they accept her. Tilly didn't waste a second. She kicked them out right away. But Molly, always the smart one, had a plan for payback. The next day, Molly took a letter and went to visit the hunchback doctor's wife. The town's mail service had always refused to help Tilly and Molly because everyone treated them like outsiders. So, the doctor's wife was one of the few people who ever tried to be kind. Molly asked her to send the letter to the neighboring town. As a thank you, she brought a cake with marijuana mixed in. The doctor's wife had suffered a lot from her husband's abuse. He hurt her so badly that she was always in pain, and he wouldn't give her any medicine to help. It was like he enjoyed making her suffer, but the marijuana in the cake could ease her pain, and Molly hoped it would help her feel better. The doctor's wife happily took the cake and agreed to send the letter. But then, something terrible happened. On her way home, Molly suddenly had a heart attack and collapsed. When Tilly found her mom lying still on the ground, she ran to the hunchback doctor for help. But the doctor, who didn't like Molly, refused to help. He just watched as Molly lay there, helpless. Molly died, and Tilly, who was already trying to move on, was swallowed up by grief all over again. But fate had a cruel way of balancing things out. Just one day later, the hunchback doctor met his own terrible fate. He had a rare sickness that made him lose control of his legs. Every time he walked, someone had to stand in front of him to stop him from walking too far. That's why his wife sat by the door every day, ready to catch him before he wandered off. But that afternoon, after eating the cake with marijuana, the doctor's wife was too dizzy to stop him in time. He wandered outside and fell straight into the pond in front of their house. He drowned right there. When the villagers found out there was marijuana in the leftover cake, they jumped to blame Tilly. They said she poisoned the doctor and his wife. They rushed to the police station, shouting and demanding that Tilly be arrested. At that scary moment, the sheriff stepped up. He said the cake with marijuana was his gift to the doctor's wife. He took all the blame and was taken away by the police. Tilly, who had already lost her lover and her mother, now lost her only friends too. She was filled with anger and sadness like never before. But Tilly didn't let herself fall into sadness. Instead, she chose to fight back. In the next few days, she carefully made beautiful costumes for the people of the neighboring town who were going to join the big opera contest. It turned out the letter Molly had asked the doctor's wife to send before she died was a secret plan. The letter told the neighboring town to copy the designs of the local team ahead of time. At the same time, Tilly quietly went to the mayor's wife and told her a shocking truth. The mayor was actually Tilly's real father. She also shared a darker secret. The mayor had been secretly putting drugs in his wife's food for years. Those drugs made the mayor's wife's mind sick, giving her terrible fears and making her feel trapped inside her own home. When the mayor's wife heard the truth, she finally exploded with years of hidden anger. That night, she took a fruit knife and cut her husband's Achilles tendons, letting him bleed out and die. Then, calm and strong, she went to the police and told everything. Days later, the opera festival started just like planned. The team from the neighboring town, dressed in Tilly's amazing costumes, quickly won the judges' hearts. But the local team, led by Gertrude and wearing badly made costumes, fell apart without Tilly's help. They lost badly. While the contest was happening, Tilly prepared her last act of revenge. With quiet grace, she put on a hat, threw the fabric on a table, and used Teddy's lighter to set it all on fire. The flames spread fast, swallowing the whole town. When the villagers came home from their shameful loss, all they saw was burnt ruins. The fancy costumes could no longer hide the ugly secrets and hate beneath. Now, everything would disappear in the fire. Maybe only through this destruction could the town wake up, see the truth, and start to change. Tilly stepped away from the ashes, free at last. She was ready to leave the old town behind and face a bigger, brighter world. What would you do if a town turned its back on you, but you came back with a plan that changed everything? Would you fight for justice or let the past stay buried? Drop a like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I want to hear how you'd handle this fiery revenge.